Let's have a little look at how we can start to work with colour using numbers in particular. And this will give you a greater understanding really of how colour works on a computer and how digital colour is recorded. And you'll start to see some of the ideas and ways we've looked at colour in Photoshop and how that can sort of translate into code. At its simplest level here inside our coding environment, on the web you can describe colours using text. Okay, so if we want a red background, if we type in red, we get red. That doesn't give us a huge opportunity to use quite such a broad range of colours. There are only so many colours you can describe with text. Also, it's very difficult to manipulate colours if they are written in text. So if we kind of extend our understanding of colour a bit further, we know that we can choose colours, and the colours can be represented with red, green and blue. That works on a decimal system and working with what we call 8 bits of colour. Okay, each channel has 8 bits. 8 bits translates up into 256 possibilities, 0 being the first, and each channel can have up to 256 colours in each. So we get a value for red, a value for green, a value for blue. We know that there are other systems of recording colour. We've looked at hue, saturation and value and brightness, where the hue is recorded around a 360-degree colour wheel, and saturation and brightness are recorded as percentages. Again, good ways to work with colour. And a further system is what we call the hexadecimal system. Okay, so this website is showing us the values for each of these different systems. Okay, you can see further down, you can see here there are written descriptions over here as well. Okay, so really that's really what we're doing with colour, but we're going to work certainly to start with RGB, which allows us a bit more control over the colour. So if we wanted to put red, green and blue and get this particular red that we've got on screen here, we need a value of 204, 0 and 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our background and we're going to have 3 values going in and 0. And that will now give us that particular red background. If we only put in one value, if I put in 255, I'm going to get a white background. If I put in 0, I'm going to get a black background. And if I put in 50, I'm going to get a slightly dark grey background, as we can see here. So I'm going to go back and put in 200 so we get a slightly grey background so we can see what's going on here. Okay. So how do we apply colour to our shape? Well, let's go back and have a little look at how the shape works and how a shape works in terms of filling with colour and adding borders and outlines around. For those of you that are familiar with using vector shapes in any shape or form, you'll know you have a thing called a stroke and a fill. So the stroke is the line around the edge, which can be vary in its thickness. And the fill is the colour in the middle, which we're used to using. And we can fill and change that colour about to our heart's content. Okay, oops, do it properly. Okay, and we can also fill the stroke around the edge. At the moment, so I'm using Illustrator to do this. You get the idea. So there's a stroke and fill. So really we're going to replicate that in code now. So we'll start with the fill. And if I go back to that colour I had before, 204, 0, 0, oops, 0. That should now be filling that rectangle with red. It's very difficult to see the stroke at the moment because it's only of 1 pixel value. So I'm going to actually add another function which can increase the size of the stroke. And I'm going to make it 5 pixels. So now I should end up with a slightly bigger, yes, black line around the edge. And I can now colour that. I'm going to make that white. So I only need 1 value. For the white. So you can see now that I'm adding a fill and a stroke, and I'm giving it an RGB value for the fill, and I'm giving it a grayscale value for the stroke. Let's draw an ellipse across the top. Now to start with, that's going to be the same, okay, colours, but I can now change the fill on that by adding a new colour. Let's just quickly take that up to 204 and see what happens. You'll see now that's turned that into a green. Okay, I can also start to add some level of transparency to that as well in what we call the alpha channel. So alpha is the equivalent of transparency. So I'm going to put in 100 to start with. And you'll see now I can start to see through. If I take it down to 0, you'll see it's completely transparent. If I take it up to 255, so we're working on the same numbers again. Whoops. I'll put an extra line in there. Let's do that again. You can see that's completely opaque. So at 100 is somewhere between the two. You get transparency going on. So now you can see that we've got transparency working. So we've now got a channel for the red, channel for the green, a channel for the blue, and then we've got a transparency channel. And each of those channels has a possibility of 256, starting with 0, going up to 255. And we've got strokes, and we can change the stroke. I could now change the stroke of my ellipse if I wanted to. If I wanted that in black, just change that to 0. You can see now I've got a black line around the edge. So that gives you an overview of how to work with RGB color. The demonstration file that I've uploaded on the Padlet really just covers what we've just been talking about, but you'll see there are a few other little things in there that you can do. There's the option to turn the stroke off and on by putting no stroke. You can have no fill, which means you don't have to worry about putting a transparency in there. You can actually turn off colors, so you can see there that's got a no fill. You'll also see that that lines are affected as strokes, so you can now see how that all works.